next level of mankind. We are human point 2. Every citizen will receive a free upgrade. You will become like us.
And if I refuse?
Don't.
What if I refuse?
I'm telling you, don't.
Then you are not compatible. You will be deleted. Why am I cold?
Oh my god, it's alive. It can feel. I broke the inhibitor. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I'm so cold.
It's alright. You sleep now, Sally. Let's go to sleep.
No, you didn't have to kill her!
Lord, I have reactivated you.
Your protocol has been successful. Now you will be deleted.
But I gave you life!
Cybermen do not require cyber slaves. Cybermen are superior to all. What is the Doctor's message?
Hello, and welcome back to another entry in the History of series. Today we will be adding to the archive the Cybermen from Peatsworld, alternatively known as the Cybusmen, but we will be also looking at the Cybermen from the Cyber Legions due to their very similar designs. So, let's begin. The Cybusmen were developed by Cybus Industries at John Lumic's request, fulfilling Lumic's lifelong ambition of eradicating mortality at any cost. He also incorporated other inventions into the upgrade, including the sleep replacement system. Lumic felt that the name Cybusmen used throughout development was flawed, and eventually landed upon the name Cybermen as a superior alternative. Due to his work contravening the Genevan Bioconvention, Lumic experimented in secret on the homeless population and others whose disappearances wouldn't be noticed. Using the ear pods he designed and sold, Lumic took mental control over the people of London, marching thousands to be converted into the first generation of Cybermen. After his life support systems were damaged by his assistant Mr. Crane, Lumic was converted against his wishes into the Cyber Controller by his own creations. By the Cybermen's cold logic, it was impractical to cling onto an already dying body. Once converted and revitalized, the Cyber instinct merged fully with his megalomaniacal mind, and Lumic planned to convert the entire Earth. However, the 10th Doctor and his companions, having accidentally landed from a parallel Earth in N-Space, managed to foil his plans. They freed London from his mental control and disabled the Cybermen's emotional inhibitors, causing them to go insane and, in some cases, explode. Lumic himself fell to his apparent demise at the hands of Pete Tyler by causing him to fall into the exploding remains of his factory. The human resistance group called the Creatures then began to clean up the remainder of Lumic's factories around the world, as before his death, he had authorized full global cyber conversion to begin, ordering that anyone who was deemed incompatible to be deleted. Following the destruction of the Cybus factory and controller in Great Britain, the Preachers moved around the rest of the world to carry out assaults on the rest of the Cybus factories. One of their earliest victories came in Paris, where a stolen Cybus airship under the command of Mickey Smith fought its way through the streets, saving civilians and destroying attacking Cybermen with a new weapon attached to the ship. Once the airship had reached the factory, it destroyed it using an EMP. After the cyber threat in Paris was ended, Mickey sent a message to those who were sent on the mission, congratulating and thanking them. Eventually, the Preachers had resistance groups set up all over the world, just as the Cybermen had factories. Soon they were ready to begin their assault on what remained of Lumic's legacy. The mission was commanded overall by Jake Simmons. The Preachers managed to develop firearms effective against the Cybermen and sent troops into other countries, recruiting others to the cause. Battles ensued when a squad moved into cyber territory, but successful battles ultimately gained them control of countries where a cyber factory was located. From there, the Preachers would surround the factory, while a single commando unit entered the factory and fought their way to the emotional inhibitor and took it out, destroying the factory and the units converted there. However, the Cybermen also sought to do the same thing: expand, recruit, take over, and destroy the enemy bases. The conflict was fought all across the planet. Ultimately, though, the Preachers were victorious as they succeeded in sealing the remaining Cybermen inside their factories. Drake congratulated the Resistance, but it was known that the Cybermen were not completely defeated, only delayed. Despite their defeats, at least 5 million Cybermen survived and were able to infiltrate their universe's Torchwood Institute. They found a crack in between universes caused by the Cult of Skara's void ship, took advantage of it, and travelled to N-Space, where they infiltrated the Earth under the guise of harmless ghosts. They established a base inside the Torchwood Tower, Canary Wharf, creating new Cybermen with whatever materials they could find. After 3 years, which only lasted 2 months in the Doctor's universe, the Cybermen were able to completely breach into the other universe, occupying every landmass on the planet before breaking into houses and promising upgrades to all humans. Simultaneously, the Cult of Skara had exited the void ship with the Genesis Ark. The cult, led by Dalek Sec, communicated with the Cyber leader and declared war. After a skirmish between humans, Cybermen, and Daleks, the cult travelled to the main room in Torchwood's Canary Wharf, elevated outside above the roof, and opened the Genesis Ark, releasing millions of Daleks who, under Sec's command, exterminated all lifeforms below, killing humans and Cybermen indiscriminately. Towards the end of the battle, the Cybermen, desperate for more troops, began directly converting people rather than transplanting brains. One such victim was Lisa Hallett. The 10th Doctor and Rose Tyler opened the void, and anything contaminated with void stuff, as he called it, was pulled in, including the Cybermen from Lumic's universe. However, the Cybermen that were made on Earth, who had never passed through the void, were not sucked in. A Torchwood 1 employee, Yanto Jones, took Lisa away from the battle and hid her in the basement of Cardiff's Torchwood 3 facility, setting up a life support system planning to restore her humanity. He was unsuccessful. She killed Dr. Tanizaki, fought with Torchwood staff, and eventually transplanted her brain into the body of a pizza delivery girl, which proved to be her undoing when the Torchwood team gunned down her new human body. After the battle, 2 children, Harry and Sam, were working on a model train set when they found stuff from Harry's dad's previous job. Inside the box was a Cyberman, in all its individual pieces. Not knowing what it was, Sam decided to put it back together so it could watch them play. Eventually it awoke and threatened to upgrade both Harry and Sam. It forced Sam to help build equipment intended to upgrade Sam and Harry into more Cybermen using other leftover supplies from the box. However, they managed to knock the Cybermen into the equipment, causing both to be destroyed. Other humans were also converted during the battle, but fully. These survivors stole teleportation technology from Torchwood in order to gather technology to help them reopen the void and free the trapped Cybermen. They did not know how to do this, however, so they stole the Doctor's TARDIS, trying to lure the 10th Doctor to them for aid. Some Cybermen were destroyed by the army with the Doctor's help, but the Cyber leader and a few others escaped to the Millennium Dome and kept the army out with a force field, and also kidnapped Martha Jones to force the Doctor to help them. The Doctor, having recovered the TARDIS, was able to enter and agreed to help them reopen the void. However, instead of opening a gateway into the void, the Doctor opened a space-time portal to the time of the dinosaurs, from which emerged a Tyrannosaurus Rex. The T-Rex dragged 2 of the Cybermen back through the portal and destroyed them while the Cyber leader was destroyed after Martha damaged the force field, allowing the Doctor to use an electrical cord from it to destroy the leader. At some point, as seen in an image from Justin Richards' The Secret Lives of Monsters, a Sontaran fought with the Cybusmen. When the barriers between worlds were weakened by Davros's reality bomb, a small number of Cybermen were able to escape from the void using a dimension belt. However, the rest of the Cybermen, along with the Daleks too, perished. Landing accidentally in 1851 London, these Cybermen, under the leadership of a Cyber Lord, made an alliance with the human Mercy Hartigan, creating a minion race called the Cybershades out of cats and dogs, and began construction of a dreadnought robot called the CyberKing, with which they planned to conquer the Earth. They also attacked Jackson Lake and his family, who, in a fugue state after seeing his wife killed, absorbed knowledge of the Doctor from an info stamp. Lake, and with his new companion, Rosita Farisi, tried to defeat them, but were unsuccessful until the 10th Doctor arrived. When Hartigan was converted into the CyberKing and the ship became mobile, the Doctor showed Hartigan what she had done, and in her anguish, she destroyed herself and the Cybermen as the Doctor sent the CyberKing to be disintegrated in the time vortex, saving London. One Cyberman fell through the void into a universe where the Doctor was the main character in a television show called Doctor Who. The 11th Doctor sent the Cyberman back into the void, to its own home. When the total event collapse caused by the sabotaging of the Doctor's TARDIS by the Silence threatened all reality, the Cybermen realized that all universes would be deleted if the crisis were allowed to continue. They investigated the source of the crisis and concluded that all predictions correlated, all evidence concurred, that the 11th Doctor himself would be responsible for the destruction of the universe. Unaware that others such as River Song could fly the TARDIS, they crossed over into N-Space and allied with the Daleks, the Sontarans, and many other species as part of the Alliance to seal the Doctor into the Pandorica. One Cyberman, posted early at Stonehenge, was hacked apart by local Celts, but still managed to threaten Amy Pond until it was fully deactivated by the Auton posing as Rory Williams. After escaping the Pandorica, the Doctor managed to reboot reality through Big Bang 2, erasing the tracks in history and thus preventing the Alliance ever needing to be formed. In a daring attempt at conquest, the Cybermen prepared an armada of cyberships and attempted to take over other universes as well as their own. Led by a cyber controller, the armada crossed from their universe into the 24th century of the Federation universe, and entered into an alliance with a species similar to their own, known as the Borg, and together they attacked the planet Delta 4. The Deltan Prime Minister escaped the attack, and warned Starfleet of the newly assembled war force. The 11th Doctor, Amy Pond, and Rory Williams accidentally found themselves on the bridge of the USS Enterprise D, just as it was attacked by a massive fleet of cyberships and Borg cubes. Joining forces with Captain Jean-Luc Picard, the Doctor intended to help Starfleet end the cyber threat. He also began to remember an encounter with the Nomad Cybermen from his fourth incarnation that took place in the same universe, which he also remembered not remembering, and concluded that the Cybusmen were rewriting history. Meanwhile, the Cybermen betrayed the Borg, and the two sides fought a devastating battle on Kojan 5. The Cybermen were victorious, and the Borg Collective was at risk of falling completely under cyber control. The Enterprise arrived at the planet to find only the remnants of numerous Borg ships in its orbit, and the bodies of Cybermen and Borg on the planet's surface. The Borg contacted the Enterprise and offered Picard an alliance. Picard refused, having painful memories of a previous encounter with the Borg, but the Doctor, Amy, and Guinan realised the alliance was necessary. Picard realised this too after the Doctor took him in the TARDIS and showed him a future in which the Cybermen succeeded. The Borg accepted the temporary alliance, and with Starfleet organised a raid on the Cyber Controller's command ship, and they weakened the Cybermen by filling their air with gold dust. After a struggle with the Cyber Controller, one of the Borg set all ships linked to the cyber web to self-destruct, much to the Doctor's disgust as he considered this genocide, despite what the Cybermen had done. With the complete destruction of the Cybermen from the Federation universe, the Doctor guessed that any changes they had made unwound themselves, although all involved would retain their memories of the event. In the 41st century, an interplanetary info thief stole Cybus Industries' blueprints from the Torchwood archive and used them to build a new cyber army on Centuria with the intent of auctioning them off as high-tech soldiers. However, they turned on him and made him a half-converted slave. They started to kidnap hundreds of tourists and convert them. However, the Doctor discovered this after the beach he was on was attacked while on Centuria for a holiday. He and the other beachgoers were thrown into a van. Jane Cadet, who was tracking down the interplanetary info theft when the Cybermen caught her, revealed to the Doctor what had happened. The Doctor and Jane managed to escape the Cybermen and blow the restraint circuits, destroying Factory 01. The Doctor and Cadet followed the Cybermen's signal, taking a robot-run airship across the now-deserted continent of Aslan on Centuria. Before arriving at Airbus Terminal, really a cyber conversion factory, the conductor became influenced by the Cybermen's hypnotic signal, which was being used to subjugate the arriving humans. The Doctor, Cadet, and a reprogrammed robot conductor pretended to be hypnotized and followed the other arrivals. Seizing the right moment, the Doctor disrupted the hypnotic signal, and the conductor attacked the Cybermen. A stray shot from the conductor ruptured the fuel banks, causing a huge explosion which killed most of the newly converted cyber drones as their humanity started to become more dominant. As the Doctor and Cadet fled the explosion, they found a bit of a map in a Cyberman's hand. Using the TARDIS, the Doctor and Cadet followed the Cyberman's map to Centuria's Arctic zone, where the Cybermen planned to ship upgraded human drones. Homage, a half-human, half-cyber drone, escaped the Cybermen who forced him and others to mine Hargstones. A giant purple ice snake attacked, but the Cybermen, with cyberdogs, deleted it. Homage ran off into the frozen wasteland, but the Doctor and Cadet were captured and taken to a huge mine below the ice. Inside the mine, the Doctor created a distraction, while Cadet stole some explosives. The distraction caused the Cybermen to split one of the cave walls, disturbing a nest of ice snakes which attacked them. Escaping the mine, the Doctor and Cadet saw the cyber spaceship had already departed with its cargo. Homage waited for them and informed them that he'd intercepted a message saying that the cargo was going to Centuria Central. He then took the explosives from Cadet and headed back into the mine. In an act of self-sacrifice, he permanently sealed it. The Doctor and Cadet left in the TARDIS, pursuing the cyber ship. The TARDIS landed in Centuria Central in a temporal stasis field. Cadet was caught in the frozen moment, but the Doctor, being a Time Lord, could resist the field. Cybermen in a patrol aircar spotted him moving around and pursued. The Doctor used a sonic screwdriver to bring them crashing down, drawing the attention of other Cybermen who arrived to salvage parts and take them back to base, including the Doctor, who was hiding among the parts. The base was the triplanetary base which the Doctor suspected had been robbed of its Hargstone reserves to enable the Cybermen to maintain a stasis machine. The Doctor learned from the Cybermen that they had built the stasis machine from Torchwood files and used the device to subdue opposition. Choosing the most secure place for the machine, the Doctor escaped and headed for the bank's vault, but it was made of titanium and protected by laser-proof glass and destructor rays. When the Doctor couldn't get in, he used a sonic screwdriver to turn the destructor rays inwards, destroying the stasis machine. The Cybermen had a mental link with the machine that enabled them to move around inside the stasis field, so when the machine was destroyed, the temporal feedback overloaded their circuits. However, a cyber helmet in the shadows glowed red, suggesting that the Cybermen presence on Centuria wasn't completely destroyed. A historical account about N-Space recounted that it had been suggested cross-pollination of the Cybusmen and Cybus Mundacians led to the advanced Cyberman model used by the Cyberiad seen at Hedrick's World of Wonders. The 11th Doctor on several occasions crossed paths with Cybermen who resembled the characteristic outline of the Cybusmen but lacked the Cybus logo on their chest and seemed to be native to N-Space. However, a branch of Mundacian Cybermen, identical to these Cybus-like models, also developed without outside influence on a Mundacian colony ship, evolving from a more primitive Cyberman. The 12th Doctor referred to this as simple parallel evolution. A Cybus cybership once fell through reality to Rome in 312 AD, where its Cybermen were taken over by the Entity. The 11th Doctor made these Cybermen believe in a cyber god, and allowed them to remain in this era, away from Earth, and spread word of their deity. In a potential future that the 11th Doctor showed Jean-Luc Picard, the Cybermen defeated the Borg after they betrayed their alliance, and invaded both N-Space and the Federation universe. The locations conquered by the Cybermen included Raxacorico Falifatoris, Quonos, Judunia, and the Starfleet Academy in San Francisco. Ultimately, this future never existed, as the Doctor convinced Picard to ally with the Borg, and the Cybermen were destroyed before they could take control of the Borg homeworld. Due to the cross-pollination, the Cyber Legions were formed. One such legion, the 12th Cyber Legion, monitored the quadrant that Demon's Run was located in during the 52nd century. In a bid to force the Cyber Leader to reveal Demon's Run location, the 11th Doctor and Rory Williams destroyed the entire fleet. Despite this huge loss, the Cyber Legions continued to be a powerful force in the universe. In particular, the 9th Cyber Legions fought across many planets, including Hith, Agrippina in a joint invasion with the 11th Legion, Delastrio, Zexos, Aester, Batraxi, Niam Majora Quintus, Tagarn, Quell, Branos IV, Cadogan, Paraxis, Houndstooth, the Sky Galleon Drowning Veil, Eridas, and the space station New Cadmus. Although they primarily fought humanity, the 9th Cyber Legion also faced other species during these conquests, including the Rachnos population of Hith, Jadoon, Svethine, and Daleks elsewhere. Ultimately, however, the Cyber Legions were near annihilated when the Tiberian Spiral Galaxy, which the Cyber Legions use as a hibernation galaxy, was destroyed, as well as the billions of people inhabiting it. The suits of the Cybermen from the Cyber Legions, including 2 that retained their Cybus logos, were recovered after the Cyber Wars and became part of Webley's collection at Hedrick's World of Wonders. In 2011, a group was encountered by the 11th Doctor and Craig Owens in Colchester. By unknown means, their cybership crashed under the future site at the Sanderson and Granger department store, centuries before the survivors were revived by the Council laying down cables on top of it, an act which awakened the ship's Cybermats. The Cybermen attempted to rebuild their numbers by upgrading store employees such as Shona and George, but they were eventually defeated when Craig's love for his son Alfie allowed him to resist cyber conversion and destroy the Cybermen with a surge of emotion. In an alternate timeline where Rassilon granted a colony of Cybermen at the end of the universe the means to conquer all of history, during the 24th century, the 10th Doctor noted that if the Cybus Cybermen, who at this point in the timeline had a cyber empire that had brought the Sontarans to near extinction, successfully conquered Sontar, they would program the Sontaran cloning factories to produce an infinite supply of Mondasians for cyber conversion. The Doctor described this possibility to Gabby Gonzalez and Cindy Wu as culminating in an infinite legion of Cybermen, stretching into forever. Despite the Doctor, Gabby, Cindy, and the last great Sontar and Wharf fleet's efforts, the Cybermen succeeded in conquering Sontar. However, this victory along with the entire timeline was ultimately erased from existence when on Gallifrey at the end of the universe, the 12th Doctor and a betrayed Rassilon used the regeneration energy that the Cybermen of the Gallifreyan Cyber Fleet had harvested from the Time Lords and intended to use to forge the Age of the Cyberiad to revert the Cybermen's conquest across time and space by sending the energy backwards through the Eye of Harmony and the Cyberiad, the latter of which extended all across history in this timeline. In an undated event, a cyber ship manned by similarly designed Cybermen, the only difference being a face-like symbol on the chest plate, was caught in a temporal storm, crashing on Earth in the Arctic Circle. 10,000 years later, in 2010, a GSO Arctic drilling station began excavating the ship. The ship's cybermats activated and spread a nanovirus throughout the station, infecting the workers and turning them into cyberslaves, who continued excavating the ship in order to reactivate the Cybermen on board. A partially converted cyberslave, Elizabeth Meadows, who still retained some free will, blackmailed the 11th Doctor into reviving the Cybermen by threatening to convert his companion Amy Pond. Though Meadows was successful in forcing the Doctor to comply, the newly revived Cyberlord immediately declared the cyberslaves inferior and killed Meadows with his wrist blaster. They then tried to shoot the Doctor, but the Time Lord escaped. After rescuing Amy Pond and discovering the Cybermen were moving towards the nearest humans on Fort Cecil, the Doctor returned to the ship's flight deck to destroy the Cybermen. The Cyberlord then tried to kill him again with the assistance of 2 other units, but was killed by GSO worker Chisholm, who was wielding a severed cyber arm. The Doctor then reversed the Cybermen's full revival, causing the ship to explode, the Doctor, Amy, and Chisholm escaping to safety. But even though all Cybermen were thought to be destroyed, the detachment that left for Fort Cecil were frozen in the snow, giving off an electrical crackle, indicating they may return. And that is the story of the Cybusmen, Cyber Legions, and other similarly designed subspecies. A string of Cybermen that made a permanent mark all across N-Space, all due to the delusions of one man trying to gain immortality in another universe. But that's not all for the Cyber Legions, as they took part in a series of cyber wars that were left out from this entry, as I'd like to collect them all together for an entry at a later date. But anyway guys, thanks for watching. This video took quite a while to put together and is almost double the length of my usual content, which is why it's been a month since the last upload. Putting the Cybusmen and the Legions together really padded out the runtime, but I think it was worth it, as there wouldn't be enough content to put the Legions separately. So if you enjoyed watching this video, then please make sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. Leave a comment suggesting some other species for me to take a look at, though I think the next slot is reserved for the Silurians and Sea Devils. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.